How many Bitcoins does it take to get some goddamn respect in this town?
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. Now, I figured we should probably make an update because it has been yet another week and it seems like the Bitcoin price is still just stalling. Now, obviously, we've seen stocks like Nvidia doing quite well, pulled back just recently, right? NASDAQ and the S&P seems to be sort of decoupling a bit from Bitcoin, but it's not in the way that you would want it to, right? Bitcoin seems to be stalling out while these other assets seem to be putting in new all-time highs. And something that actually just happened yesterday alone was that we had saw about $106 million of ETF outflows. In fact, Fidelity had the largest single day outflow of 44.8 million, of course, followed by our good old friends at Grayscale. So this is obviously sending sort of some, I guess you could say some reverberations around the crypto space. And, if you are over on X, you'll notice now there's a lot more negative sentiment. People are starting to doubt themselves, right? So what is really going on? I mean, we had spoke about the fact that summers generally, historically, statistically, tend to be sort of boring times for Bitcoin, right? And a lot of times people don't realize that Bitcoin usually will consolidate for a very long time in a very boring price range before having those massive moves, right? I mean, if we have a look at what's going on right now, you could see right here, we were starting to sort of, put in these higher lows and then we fell below. And the same thing, we started to put in these higher lows, or you could even actually draw it, you can go something like that if you really want to, make it a little more extreme, and we're below this level again. But ultimately, really, what we've been saying is we're sort of just stalling between the $60,000 and $70,000 range. Now, there are some very interesting things that we could look at right now to sort of signal what is actually really happening in the Bitcoin space. Is it time to actually start taking massive profits and getting bearish? Should we be buying these dips? Well, I guess, sort of to put it bluntly, guys, there's some good news. And depending on your time horizon, there might be some bad news. And that's kind of what I want to go over today to sort of explain exactly where we are right now. So I want to make this video a little bit shorter. There's not like crazy things to go over. But again, if you're sitting on the sidelines or you're worried or maybe you're overexposed to crypto, this might help you to sort of understand exactly where we are right now, guys. And again, as you guys can see, I have been using this Blowfin chart over here. And I'm just bringing this up because they still have this promo running until June 30th. You can get up to $300. You deposit $2,000, you move it into your futures account, and then you can basically trade with this bonus. So if you guys are interested, make sure that you check the link in the description, or you could just use the code CryptoZombie. So, talking about some people who are not bearish, we have Michael Saylor over at MicroStrategy saying that they have accumulated an additional 11,931 Bitcoin. So Michael Saylor is still buying. And another bit of news that's kind of been getting people excited recently is Michael DELL. So he is the CEO of DELL Technologies. And if I kind of just scroll down here into his timeline, you could see he said scarcity creates value, right? Now, some people were saying, well, what is he talking about? And then, of course, Michael Saylor replies that Bitcoin is digital scarcity, which he then did retweet. Then he did a poll saying, what do you think will be the next big breakthrough in tech? Now, very, very high over here on AI, but blockchain still leading the way at 38.6%. And then he retweets this picture from Michael Saylor, which is Cookie Monster eating a bunch of Bitcoin, right? So again, you talk about the smart money, you talk about the dumb money, and I do have something I want to get into in relationship to the both of those at the end of this video, but it still seems like now we're hearing, Bitcoin and crypto as a presidential debate, right, topic. So it obviously is a very changing landscape, I would say. And, just to point out, like Thomas had mentioned, if you just simply look at what we're doing, in all of these previous cycles, we've had these very boring, sideways, choppy sort of accumulation ranges, right? If you look at 2016, we built, a base right around here, pretty much right around $1,000. And then once we broke through, that was when you saw the price skyrocket. Same thing happened in 2020, right? Just below the $20,000 range. And it looks like the same thing is happening again below the previous all-time high range, right? Another interesting thing to point out is that, looking at all the negativity that had come out this week, you had Germany, which apparently selling 5,000 Bitcoin. You had the ETF selling 8,500 Bitcoin, and yet we're still holding this range, right? So if it was to be sort of that doom and gloom scenario, you would think that it would be a little bit larger of a cascade of selling. So this is what I wanted to show you guys. Number one is the fact that we have the DXY again attempting to push up to this downward sloping trend. So, obviously Bitcoin being the newer kid on the block, yes, it still gets treated like a risk asset, but you will notice that when you do have the DXY starting to move to the upside, Bitcoin has a bit of a struggle, right? But we had two rejections back here between the months of October and actually back in basically October of last year. And then we also had these three rejections during the month of April. So the question is the DXY just going to continue on its downward sloping trend? I mean, I would assume that as the money printers eventually get turned on, we know they're going to eventually cut the rates, then yes, I would expect this to come lower, which would bode well for Bitcoin. However, if we look at this parallel channel that Bitcoin has formed, we've noticed that, yes, we did have a little bit of a bearish fake out down here, but right now it looks like we're starting to come up to the bottom of this range again. Now, last time we did find support. The question is, will we find that support again, right? If we do look at Market Cipher, we've noticed that we are seeing money flow flip a little bit into the red, right? So again, could this just be, the whole sell in May, walk away mentality? Well, you got to zoom out. This is the thing. When you're looking at it in the shorter term, it sucks day by day, right? To just see the price stuck in these ranges, right? But you have to understand that in order to build the foundation, in order to build and make that structure, you have to put in those boring daily candles. So why don't we zoom out a bit and look at the monthly? If you have a look at the monthly, okay, now, yeah, I mean, Bitcoin right here, we got up to around that $68,000 range, but if we just kind of look at where we had the previous close of that all-time high, that was closer to around the $61,000 level. You could see right here. And Bitcoin is still sitting above that level. In fact, really, what we're seeing right now isn't even as bad as what we saw back in April, right? We had gone from a $74,000 Bitcoin, and we had a 20% drop. And then if you want to actually go to the next month, we had a almost 24% drop for Bitcoin. So we're only sitting now down from top to bottom, roughly, I don't know, around 12, 13, 14%. So again, we are still putting in those higher lows and we are maintaining that structure, but it is very possible that, what we're seeing sort of, right here is what we're seeing right here. And I'll get back to these lines in just a minute. But ultimately, this consolidation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Well, we've only been going sideways for about 4 months. So really, you could argue that this area around 25,000 was a little bit more painful than this area right here. And I imagine a lot of people thought that this would have been that fake out, right? And what ended up happening? Well, we went on a massive tear. In fact, once we sort of broke out of that range, Bitcoin had 140% move to the upside, right? So that's just something to consider. And actually, let me go back to this chart really quick as well, because, if we switch this to the weekly, you'll notice something quite interesting. We actually have a green dot over here on the miners' hash ribbons, right? Now, if we go back historically, I've drawn in all the lines right here, and this is what we went over in the previous video. I mean, you can go back pretty far. I'm not going to do every single number, but you could see that for the most part, once you get these buy signals, that sort of shows that the miners selling has pretty much exhausted, and that's usually when you can see the price start to move. Now, obviously, it doesn't move up immediately, but each one of these buy signals, for the most part, has signaled a decent buy. Now look, even if you bought back in here, you were buying Bitcoin, let's say you got it when the candle flashed around 3,500 or even at the top around 4,000, yeah, we still had a little bit downward sideways to go, but you could see once that chop, right? Once that boring sideways accumulation, once that range was broken, massive move to the upside, right? And a lot of these tend to signal pretty good buy opportunities. Now, we don't have the buy signal just yet, but the fact that we're starting to see that capitulation and we've gotten the green dot shows us historically that we are setting up for a potential buy zone. Now, obviously, this is shorter term. Longer term, again, Bitcoin remains in an uptrend. One thing interesting, though, is you can see if you look at the lower time frames, which I'm not really ultimately focused on because we know it's a little bit boring, but you can see, if you look at the daily EMA ribbon, okay, falling below this does not mean you're going into a bear market until you have like full-on confirmation on the larger time frames, but really anything below this ribbon, especially on this sort of purplish lavender line right here, that represents phenomenal buy opportunity. So you could see back between around April of the beginning of the year and May, anything really that was falling below sort of that $60,000, $61,000 range was a gift, which explains that this was a massive buy opportunity. And I believe that's why we saw this buying right here. I mean, you could see that Bitcoin literally in just a day, okay? I mean, the weekly is even more incredible, right? If we go back to the weekly, you know, you could see, look at how that perfectly got supported on the monthly time frame, right? So anything down in this area is ultimately buy opportunity, and we haven't even touched that level yet. That level is still sitting at around 61,000, which perfectly coincides with the bottom of this range, not to mention the fact that we do have this upwards trend of support, right? So those are all just things to keep in mind. And again, you know, this is the sort of market that rewards those who are patient and punishes those who are impatient, right? I mean, you're sitting literally 14% away from all-time highs, and yet people are bearish. Now look, yes, we have broken to the bottom of the lower moving on the the lower moving average on the pi cycle indicator, but we did the same thing down here. And this area up here isn't even as long. So, I mean, you could see if you just kind of, you know, look at this sideways consolidation, right? Before we had the breakout, you know, this right here lasted about 217 days. I don't know if anybody remembers how boring this range was, but anytime we had dipped below this moving average, right? Down here, we got to buy at 24,000. Down here, we got to buy again at 24,000. And that level held quite well, which is making me think that this 56K area is probably arguably going to be the lowest level, you know, that you've seen until we break the all-time high. And then the next area of interest is upwards of around $90,000. And we know that, you know, you can have these sideways consolidations. Here's another one, right? We had this one sideways for about 63 days, 2 months, right? A little bit shorter, but as soon as it broke out of that range, right? As soon as it broke out of this range right here, we had a 68% move to the top. So if we were to break out of that range right here to the top, that's about a 32% move, right? So again, you know, you have to ask yourself, is this the time to be panicking or is this the time to be accumulating, right? And as we have a look at these moving averages, we are still holding above the 21 exponential, this green one right here. And if you look at previously, the ultimate sort of setup for this bull run is the largest on the bottom moving average to the shortest on the top, the 200, the 100, the 50, and the 21 exponential. Now, we haven't even had that crossover yet. And that's usually signaling the most bullish momentum of the market, and yet we are still waiting. You know, essentially what you're looking for is for this moving average to just kind of continue moving upwards like this, and eventually what you'll get is at some point this is going to cross. And then you're going to have the 200, 150, and 21 in that exact order, and that creates a recipe for absolute massive bullishness, right? And we still technically haven't even had that crossover yet, considering that from the bottom, still to date, if you don't want to count the all-time high, we're still up about 157% from the bottom. We were up about 200%, okay? Another thing just to point out is if you have a look at the MVRV-Z Score, this is sort of a fair value assessment to sort of let you know whether or not Bitcoin is overvalued or undervalued. And to get out of the way right here, if you look above right here, you could see that, yes, in the past, we've had insane spikes over 10, but really, you need to get at least into the 6-7 range before you consider it being overheated. So even if you assume that we're not going to get as high, it does seem like we're getting lower each time, you know, you would still minimally accept that you might be seeing around a 6 or something like that, whereas the highest that we've been is only around a 2 to 3 down here. So you could see that according to this, Bitcoin is not actually even close to being overvalued. I mean, slightly if you consider it above zero, but for the most part, guys, this is showing us that there's still a lot more room to go. And something interesting to mention, just to point out, the same way that you can have these, you know, over leveraged longs, the open interest moving to the downside, like Rover pointed out, we have about $6.25 billion worth of liquidation around the $72,000 level. And when you have this many people that are getting bearish and this many people that are starting to short, well, they usually get punished. And what happens is you tend to get a short squeeze to the upside. So even if you are the most bearish of bearish person, which I don't know why you would be, because we're still putting constructive, trend to the upside, ultimately, this is still suggesting that Bitcoin should at least go back to 72,000 just to liquidate and have that short squeeze, right? Because, that's how the markets go. They tend to punish the people who are overconfident. So when the longs start getting overconfident, that's when you see the 20-30% dip. When the shorts start getting overconfident, that's when you see the 20 to 30% pumps, right? Which is why we do have that target at around sort of that $90,000 area. So the good news is Bitcoin is still in a bull trend. We are still in a bull market. The bad news, I guess, is that we may have some more sideways. We may have some more downside. And the other thing too, and this is from Chris, actually, over at Crypto. Pretty cool dude. We've hung out before in Dubai. I've talked to him, and we've talked about crypto and Bitcoin. And the one thing that he looks at a lot is sort of comparing, and I hate to use the term smart money to dumb money, because let's be honest, Wall Street's not really that smart, although they like to pretend to be, but at the end of the day, they're kind of just guessing as much as we are, unless of course they're insider trading. But in this particular instance, what you can see is sort of an inverse relationship between the supply last active over a year in the red and the supply younger. So I guess in a nutshell, you could say that the younger supply could be the dumb money. Could be, maybe in this case, it's the institutions. But historically speaking, you can see that there is a bit of an inverse relationship, right? When they tend to have these crossovers, that's when we're getting closer to the bottom. Well, we're currently in an expanding environment right now. But what you'll notice is as the smart money begins to get more excited, which is, as the dumb money, or I hate using that term, the newer holders, the blue line, start to get excited about price action, they actually start accumulating into the all-time high, where you're seeing the holders that have been having it for longer, the quote-unquote smarter money, start selling into the high. Now, just because you have this crossover doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of the market, but it does signal that they are starting to take profits, or at least they feel comfortable maybe starting to average out. And you can definitely see right here that, the disparity, that we're having this move, and this is a pretty sharp move down. I mean, until then it had been putting in higher highs. This is a lower high on this, and I'm sorry about the chart being blurry. I took it as a screenshot, but I think you can see right here that we're starting to see that curve to the downside. So what is that suggesting? Well, it does not suggest that the market is coming to an end, and it does not suggest that this is, the top. But what it does signal is that maybe these ideas about these 4-year cycles, which have worked for such a long time, may not necessarily work. Whereas everybody's assuming that we're just going to have this massive bull run into 2025, there is that chance that the market could end sooner than most people are anticipating. But it doesn't signal that the market is overheated or that we've hit a top just yet. So, if you're scared, I wouldn't say now is the time to be afraid until we start losing some of these levels. But I would say that, if you are looking to take the most advantage out of this bull run, you might want to start paying attention, not financial advice. If you haven't gotten enough allocation, the big moves, they come very fast, and most people get caught off sides. And when they do happen, you can have these 20, 30, 40, 50% moves in less than a month, right? So yeah, it's boring now, but it's boring until it's not. Right? So that's just something to point out. And that's basically where I'm going to end this video, guys. If you are interested, I always take these boring opportunities to learn to trade the ranges. In fact, some of the most trading knowledge that I really acquired was during bear markets. It's pretty easy to just keep longing, in these bull markets. But if you do want a little bit of an edge on that trading, MetaSignals is still offering their 14-day free trial, and you will get full lifetime access if you want to get that NFT for all of those future products that will be coming out, including automation. And don't forget, guys, you have that $300 bonus if you're interested over on Blowfin. So that is basically it for me today, guys. Again, the good news, we're still in a bull market. The bad news is, well, we might be losing momentum. There might be a little bit of sideways choppy action, and unfortunately the bull run may end sooner than most are anticipating. However, I just want to just say something real quick. When I say the Bitcoin bull market is ending, quote unquote, okay? There's a lot of people in the space that look to the past charts and they go, oh, so we're going to get that 80% correction, right? That 70 to 90% correction. I personally do not think that's going to happen. So even if Bitcoin was to, let's say, go to 100 Okay. I don't think you're going to see more than a 50% drawdown simply because of the big money and the institutions and the fact that every time we've seen these 20% dips, I mean, we haven't even had a 30% dip yet, okay? That was common in 2017. 2017 was 30%, 40% dips all the way. Last cycle, 20%, 30 dips. This time around, we got almost a 24, right? So I think even though the volatility, may be diminishing to the upside, as some people say, I also think it's diminishing to the downside. I don't think you're going to see Bitcoin going below 40,000 or down to 30Ks unless there's some massive just sort of geopolitical thing where we're in some kind of a global recession. And, could that happen? Sure. But right now, at this point in time, not to mention that we're in an election year, I just don't see that happening. So just wanted to give you guys a bit of an update where we're at. Hopefully this video made sense for you. Yeah, I could have just said we're going sideways. Tyler S. Crypto actually put out a really funny video. He was like, super important Bitcoin price action, and it was just 24 seconds long, and he was like, yeah, we're going sideways. That's the video. Definitely cracked up when I saw that. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, we're going sideways, okay? But, again, the day-to-day can get to you. It really can. And you could start to doubt yourself, right? But, zoom out, look at the bigger picture. Really, everything is still on track. And I do imagine that once we do break, it's going to move pretty fast. So once we do take out those liquidations, which I believe we're going to at 72, I think you could see a very fast move to the sort of $85,000, $90,000 range. And that's where you're going to want to be prepared for, right? You're not going to want to be sitting on the sideline or freaking out. So that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much. If you do want to learn how to trade, check out these tutorials popping up right here, right now. Don't forget, there's over $70,000 in all kinds of bonuses below. Take advantage of those. I don't know how long they're all going to last. Until next time, guys, stay crypto, and of course, peace out.